My name is Peter Cucciara, better known around these parts as Uncle Pete's. And I am the co-owner, along with my wife, of Uncle Pete's Hickory Ribs. We've been in the barbecue business for over 13 years. And then during that period, we won a series of awards. Boston Magazine has given us the best of barbecuing. We have won the barbecue cook-off contest from the East Coast Grill 2 years in a row, and that particular restaurant is owned by noted chef Chris Schlesinger. Additionally, since we've been in business, the Zagat survey has given us top awards for our food. Also, a local food critic called the Phantom Gourmet has given us the best of barbecuing, one of the grade A barbecuing restaurants in New England. Additionally, the local newspapers, the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald, have all written outstanding articles regarding our barbecuing. What we're going to do today is do the basic elements of barbecuing. And we're going to do it with 3 products. We're going to talk about the St. Louis pork rib, the Texas beef rib, and the Carolina pulled pork. Now, first and foremost is to start with a good quality piece of meat. So here we have the St. Louis pork rib. Now, this doesn't come from St. Louis. St. Louis refers to a type of cut. Now, when the pork rib comes off the pig, it has an oval shape going around here. It almost looks like a fish. Well, this oval part is called the brisket bone. It's very chewy. It doesn't give you a good product. So when this is trimmed off to a St. Louis cut, you have the Cadillac piece here. Tender, juicy, and moist. Now you've got to prep this for your smoker. The first thing you're going to do is remove this fat membrane. And you're removing it for 2 reasons. One, you want the smoke to penetrate into the rib. Second of all, you want the flavors of your dry rub also to penetrate the rib. My assistant pitmaster here is Jervis. He's going to come in and show you how to remove this membrane. Now, this takes a little practice. He's going to make it look easier than it really is. This is one job where practice makes perfect. But without it, as you see as he pulls this membrane off, if you didn't, there's no way that the smoke would be able to penetrate that thoroughly. In addition to the dry rub, wouldn't get in there. Plus, your customers are going to end up with this as a chewy piece of meat on their ribs. Now, here's the same technique with the Texas beef rib. It's a little easier because the rib is larger. But still, it does take a lot of experience to really do this in one fast, swell movement.
How long has he been doing this?
Now, we're going to leave this little bit of fat on it, which will help keep the meat nice and moist. Now, we're going to start back with the pork rib. If you can, I'll move this, Jervis, if you move the pork rib back over here. And he's going to start dry rubbing it. Now, the first thing he's going to do is take a butter blend. And the reason we use the butter blend, it accomplishes 2 purposes. One, it keeps the ribs nice and moist during the smoking process. Second of all, it allows the dry rub to adhere and not fall off as it's going into the smoker. Now, the dry rub, every barbecuer has his own. Just like every housewife has their own recipe for spaghetti sauce. There's an old expression in barbecuing that if I tell you my recipe, I'm going to have to kill you. And obviously, I don't want to do that. My wife and I traveled to Kansas City. We traveled to Texas, Memphis, the Carolinas to develop a good dry rub. And a good old boy down in Euless, Texas, gave me some really great tips in barbecuing, especially in making the rub. Now, he's been in the barbecuing business probably as long as I am old. And over a couple of 6-packs of beer, he gave me one hint, and he said, try it. And it has really worked. And since that, I've been using it. Now our particular dry rub has 14 herbs and spices. I am going to give you a few of them, but before I do, when you make your dry rub, you measure it, and measure it by weight or volume. And try not to put salt as the first 5th or 6th ingredient by weight or volume in there. Why? Because salt extracts moisture from the meat. You don't want that. It'll dry out your ribs. Now, some of the items I use in my rub are basil and oregano, chili powder, paprika, onion powder, garlic powder. You can experiment with more or less. Don't expect this to happen overnight. You're going to go through a lot of beer and a lot of friends before you come up with what you think is acceptable for you. But please have patience. That patience will produce a great product, and you'll have a great time coming up with it. You see how, again, with the beef rib, he's rubbing that butter in there and all the nooks and crannies. He wants to keep it nice and moist. Then he's going to take that dry rub, and you can see how that dry rub is going to adhere. You can actually take, after he rubs that in, you can take the rib and actually put it on a vertical, and that dry rub is not going to come off. This is part of your flavored skins. What you're coming up with, and what most people don't realize, is that you want to come up with microscopic tasting skins. Not one particular flavor overwhelming the other, but all combined produce that real great barbecue flavor and taste. Now this is your Carolina pulled pork. And this is a pork butt, part of the pork shoulder. Now in the trade it's called a Boston butt. It's called that all over the country. No one knows where that term originated, but everyone uses it. Now each cut is going to vary in the fat content. These will look very, very lean, but some will come heavily with a much more heavy fat content. So I think this is lean enough that we're not even going to have to trim it. But if you get this amount of fat covering the whole thing, you want to trim a little bit just to keep it covered, because this fat is going to caramelize into a beautiful sugar, nice and sweet. So again, my assistant pitmaster Jervis is now going to take the butter blend and rub it into the pork butt. You see how he's getting it all in the nooks and crannies when he turns it over? He's going to put some more in there. All this is going to give a nice moist content. And additionally, it's going to get that dry rub in there and make it stay there. And this will give you a pulled pork that will melt in your mouth. Now when this pulled pork is cooked, what fat remains is actually going to caramelize into a sugar. And when fat caramelizes into a sugar, it turns black. Now some people in the trade call this a crust. Other people call it Mr. Black and Mr. White. What that means is when you pull the pulled pork, you try to get the crust of the meat in with the white. And that gives you that crunchiness plus the softness of the whiter meat. Now he's going to apply the dry rub. Again, he's going to get it all in that nooks and crannies. Now this dry rub is going to add another level of taste. You've got the butter, you've got the fat, the butter blend, you've got the dry rub, and of course, you've got the meat. Now this is going to cook for a period of 12 hours. It takes that long to render out all that fat. But at the end of that process, you're going to get a product that your mouth is just going to water out. When that thing comes out, get yourself a French roll, rip that Mr. White, Mr. Black off, stuff it in there, take a bite out of that and a nice swig out of a can of beer. You'll think you died and gone to heaven.